Hello, I'm Stephen E. Andrews, author of 100 Must-Read Science Fiction Novels. This is Outlaw Bookseller, and today we're going to talk about the most important series of science fiction books ever published. Foundation is more famous. Dune has sold a lot more copies. William Gibson's Sprawl trilogy is more literary. But there is one series of science fiction books which are little read today. In fact, they're out of print. But these books are more important in codifying exactly what science fiction is than any of these currently more celebrated works. It's a series that's short, but it's stuffed and suffused with epic incidents over a huge scope, and it has more tropes in it than you can possibly imagine. It really does throw everything in. For this series, did more to set the standard for what science fiction writers strive to do more than any other. And it created in the science fiction readership the paragon of what it was looking for, the sense of wonder. The sense of wonder is that moment when a science fiction story opens up the reader's consciousness to a surprising and thrilling expansion of ideas with a revelation or more than one revelation that is truly mind-blowing. It's like a bucket of water in the face. This is a literary orgasm, the big wow instant factor that only SF can deliver. It's what the Romantics called the sublime, full of awe, terror, and beauty. So join me as we enter the world of The Weapon Shops by A.E. Van Vogt. It is July 1941, and the golden age of science fiction has been reigning for only 2 years, ushered in by John W. Campbell Jr.'s tenure as editor of the pulp magazine Astounding. Since the summer of 1939, Campbell has been demanding a higher standard of writing and a higher standard of scientific conception from his writers, and he has discovered and or published early works by Isaac Asimov, Robert A. Heinlein, Theodore Sturgeon, and A.E. Van Vogt. Campbell has, with this stable of scribes, set the parameters for modern science fiction as we know it. He has also worked as a writer, culminating his career with Who Goes There in 1937, filmed as The Thing in the 50s and the 80s. And his star contributor A.E. Van Vogt, a Canadian writer, has published Black Destroyer and Discord in Scarlet in Astounding, the first 2 stories of the Voyage of the Space Beagle series that will inspire Forbidden Planet, Star Trek, and more specifically, Alien. Make no mistake, without Campbell's Astounding, there would be no Hollywood or TV science fiction. But in July of 1941 sees Van Vogt submit his most astonishing tale yet, the story that will change everything, The Seesaw, an incredible story of the sudden materialization out of thin air of a mysterious building in contemporary America. In front of the building, a hologrammatic sign appears, shining brightly. This sign, which appears from all angles to face whichever viewer is looking at it, reads, "Fine weapons. The right to buy weapons is the right to be free." This is a shop, a weapons shop. In its display window is an array of strange futuristic weapons and another sign reading, "The finest energy weapons in the known universe." A number of people have gathered outside the incongruous store. 2 of them, a cop and a shrewd newspaper reporter called McAllister, try to enter the weapons shop through its only visible door. But the handle will not turn for the cop. McAllister, however, sensing a story as any good journalist would, finds the door yielding to his touch. McAllister then finds himself within the shadowy interior of the shop, and science fiction will never be the same. Readers of that issue of Astounding were, well, Astounded. In The Seesaw, Van Vogt introduced his readers to an exotic, mysterious, and weird future world, the Empire of Isha, which dominates Earth 7,000 years from now, some 5,000 years after a war that killed billions. As McAllister, the reporter, discovers the dreamlike, jarring reality of the weapon shop and its enigmatic staff, the weapon makers, he finds himself in terrible danger and is thrust forward into a further advanced futurity and a fate that is inescapable. And at the climax of this story, widely anthologized over the years, the readers of 1941 marvelled at McAllister's fate. And although some of Van Vogt's writing may seem crude and of its time by today's standard, it still stimulates a feeling of breathless awe as the implications of its final sentence hit home. For that sentence is arguably the most definitive early example of conceptual breakthrough in science fiction. Conceptual breakthrough, that consummately crafted instant when an SF writer turns their carefully built world upside down and upsets the reader's expectations with a stunning twist ending that isn't a trick, it's a supernova. Tense and deeply involving, The Seesaw later formed much of the prologue to the Weapon Shop series that unfolded over the next 2 years as a serial in Astounding and was later collected into 2 books. For then, in the 1940s, there were no books with science fiction inscribed on their covers. They were only magazines. When those stories were compiled in the early 50s into 2 books, they were entitled The Weapon Shops of Isha and The Weapon Makers. This diptych of books remained in print for 30 years, but is now sadly unavailable, though copies are easily gettable second-hand. They were fix-ups, which is Van Vogt's own term, like all the early classics of genre SF, stories and serials later compiled, revised into novels in the 1950s. But back in the 1940s, readers were foaming at the mouth for more of the Empire of Isha. So in Van Vogt's sequel, The Weapon Shop was the next to appear in Astounding. Farah and Creel are a happy middle-aged couple who are walking at night along the grassy pavements of their idyllic village with the bright lights of Imperial City in the distance. In this dreamy opening to the weapon shops, immediately Van Vogt creates an oneiric atmosphere, continuing the mood of contentment and assurance in the beauty of the sublime empire that Farah feels. He believes his civilization, the Empire of Isha, is the best of all possible worlds, a benevolent utopia ruled by the gentle and just largesse of the beautiful, majestic Empress Inelda, the 1180th of her line to hold court. Farah is a Candide-like figure, naive and innocent. It's a becalmed pastoral scene which Van Vogt delineates in his swooning, intoxicating pop style. Like Kuttner and Moore, he could be lyrical and seductive in his prose. And then Farah is shocked, outraged by the appearance of a new building on a leafy vacant lot, just as McAllister was long ago in the opening story of the sequence. Farah can see that in his village, on that green, has opened a weapons shop. He is outraged. The weapon shops normally only exist in the cities. They are an affront to the empire and to the stunning Empress Inelda, but they are strangely tolerated. How can these arguably revolutionary outlets be opening in suburban locales? Angry, Farah seeks to challenge this incursion and barges into the store to complain, just as McAllister did before him. Within the weapon shop, the dreamy tincture of Van Vogt's prose infuses Farah's experience. The shop staff, the weapon makers, explain that the weapons can only be used for defense. They describe how, in this world of imperial power and super science, the only chance of preventing totalitarian abuse of individuals is for the people to exercise the right to make purchases at the weapon shops of futuristic guns. So in these stories, who are the heroes? Who are the villains? The Imperious Imelda, is she heroine or villain? The weapon makers, what do they want to do? What is their essence? Our perspective shifts with Farah as it is revealed to him that his paradise may actually be a dystopia. The Seesaw and the Weapon Shop, these two early stories in the sequence, are later expanded to novella length in thrilling wonder stories. The appearance of the weapon shop in the village causes a widening rift between Cale, the son, and Farah, the father. Cale is young and naturally rebellious, and he elects to leave the village for the Imperial City, for he has formed an attachment to Lucy, the weapon shop girl in the blue dress, whose superiors in the weapon shop see potential in Cale to help them in their struggle, whatever that may be. On his way to Imperial City, and when reaching there, he gambles, with much luck on his side, until things take a dark turn and he falls into trouble. From there, the story moves into space. With his simply drawn but highly memorable characters, from the toothsome Empress to the patrician and enigmatic weapon shop agent Hedrock, a man with a huge secret, Van Vogt creates a swirling maelstrom of events which the reader is sucked into. Hedrock is one of the key geopolitical mover-shakers in the pay of the weapon shops, a manipulative, secretive man who has a strange relationship with the haughty Empress, who is as much trapped by her position as she is a ruthless tyrant. What is the true nature of the enigmatic Imelda? There is so much more to the story than this teaser I've related to you here. The stakes rise, the stage becomes the universe, and both books, The Weapon Shops of Isha and The Weapon Makers, end with a staggering conceptual breakthrough, one in each volume, whose majesty and mystery invoke the sublime even today. Philip K. Dick, Brian Aldiss, and Christopher Priest, just three examples of authors whose mastery of conceptual breakthrough was inspired by the writing of Van Vogt. The Empire of Isha series is intricate and complex, swelling in pace, volume and scope, taking us into space and beyond. Its cognitive dissonance wrongfoots the reader, filling us with admiration at that dreamy strangeness that is exhilarating, and all in the early 1940s. This is pure pulp genre SF in all its sense of wonder. It is full of fascinating tropes, from the PP machines, which assess altruism, to the Calidity scales, which show how cunning and shrewd Hedrock is in his quest, to infinity drive starships, aliens and giants. The weapon shops sets the standard for what is to come in science fiction in the 1950s. As with all great stories, there are more than two antagonists. On one side, the weapon makers, on the other side, the Empress Imelda, but there is a third force perhaps, or maybe even a fourth. These are the wonders that await you, so seek out copies of The Weapon Shops of Isha and The Weapon Makers, and watch out, because one night you may be walking in a quiet street and see that a weapon shop has materialized in your neighborhood. And remember, the finest energy weapons in the universe are yours to buy, to defend yourself and make some blows against the Empire.